everybody. My name is Arvlin from the New York Botanical Garden, and this is the Plants as Liberation series. Could you first just say your name, your pronouns, and how you would describe your work?
Certainly. My name is Suhaly Bautista-Carolina, also known as Moon Mother Apothecary. My pronouns are she and they. And I would describe my work as existing at the intersection of plant power and people power. It's a practice that's very centered on us, on my people, on my family, on my friends. A lot of what I do is informed by the people that I love. And I'm an herbalist. I'm a spiritual herbalist in particular. And I do so many things. I do knowledge shares and medicine making workshops and try to create a space where folks can enter into their own healing through the wisdom and the magic of plants.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. I love that. Could you share an early memory with plants? Kind of what sparked this path for you?
It's interesting because now that I'm a mother and I have a daughter, I watch the very natural way that she gravitates towards herbs and plants and flowers and trees. And of course, we nurture that. But when we sort of stand back, she guides herself to the elements. And I think that's very beautiful. And I'm sure that I was the same way. And even as city kids, I feel like I really love to debunk this myth that New Yorkers are not tethered to our land. And I'm working on that. I'm working on that as an herbalist that's based in New York City and someone who was born and raised here and continues to and always has appreciated the herbs and the plants and the flowers and the waterways that we have here on the Nape and I'm always grateful to our original land stewards, and also like to think of myself as continuing in the legacy of stewarding this land, whether it's a urban landscape or wherever I may be. So I think I was raised between Central Park and Riverside Park, so up on the Upper West Side, and that neighborhood where I was raised has so many names. It's Morningside Heights, or it's Harlem, or it's the Upper West Side. I'm sure it has many, many new real estate names that I do not honor. But I was raised between two parks, and I spent so much time in those parks, and I learned them like the back of my hand. And I was really allowed to sort of roam free and explore in those parks. And I think those are my earliest memories of really forming a relationship with my backyard, right? Because I think as New Yorkers, there are things that sometimes separate us. So there is an intentionality of going to the place, like going to the park and making that part of your weekend. And both of my parents respectively had us spend a lot of time in parks. And I think that's where those are my earliest memories of sort of coming home and my pockets were filled with everything I'd collected in the park that day, and like having a favorite tree that I would go to and seeing how it changed across the seasons. And even as an adult, returning to those spaces and seeing it through this like new lens and understanding the medicine components of it, but also as a child, just understanding the medicine of its spirit, of how it called to me, how I wanted to spend time in certain spaces, or like make a world out of where I was sitting or lying or running. So I think those are some of my earliest memories with the plants.
Oh, that's beautiful. And especially someone who currently lives near Riverside Park, I definitely am very drawn to those spaces and feel like when you just kind of need access to water and land, it's just, they're so important to have. And I love that you said it's a part of your backyard. People in New York are like, oh, we don't have a backyard, but it's like it's a communal backyard, but it's
Yeah,
a backyard
exactly.
still.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you talk about Moon Mother Apothecary? How did it start, and what is the intention behind your herbal practice?
Yeah, of course. So I studied spiritual herbalism in Brooklyn, New York, with a master herbalist named Karen Rose, whose apothecary and practice is called Sacred Vibes. And I was actually pregnant when I started studying herbalism. So my journey is aged or mirrored by my own child. I can look at her and say, oh, this is how long I've been studying herbs, or like formally studying herbs at least. And so that entry point of my study, of my apprenticeship, led ultimately to the development of Moon Mother Apothecary. And part of what we do in our last level of the apprenticeship is create a medicine line, and imagine that we're serving a certain community or a certain purpose, or really being creative about the way that we wanted to be as herbalists in the world. And that was really what inspired Moon Mother. And at the time, I knew my daughter's name was going to be Luna, and I wanted her to be part of my practice, my entering into this space, because her being in the world was aligned with my becoming an herbalist. And so I wanted to honor that in the name of Moon Mother. And then myself and the mother, and the moon being the mother of us all. And so just thinking about our relationship to the divine feminine and wanting that to be centered in my work. And it's beautiful, because if you look at the Moon Mother logo, she's pregnant, actually, right? She's supposed to be me at the beginning of my journey, and she's also had a little bit of a facelift, if you will, recently, where she kind of, she reflects the changes and the phases that I've gone through, even just from the very early days to this moment right now. And even in that short span, my practice has grown so much, and I've leaned more into justice-based work and centering Black, Indigenous people of color, and centering femmes, and centering women and mothers and parents, and really refining who it is that Moon Mother serves. I feel like I've been in that space over the last few years. And so, and I think about that as a way of deepening my practice, that it's not, for me, even my relationship to the way that I offer my medicines has changed, right? I'm really, really thinking about that and trying to be as intentional as possible in the way that where my medicine lands, and who it reaches, and where it comes from, and sourcing from people who I know are working with the land in right relationship. And yeah, I think that I'm like fast forwarding to this moment, but the origin story of Moon Mother is also very beautiful, because I think I was, just wanting to be in the space, wanting to create community, wanting to know who the herbalists were, and, make medicine together and understand the herbs. I feel like we're always understanding the herbs, but there's always so much to learn from them. And I love that my practice is not only an apothecary or a shop, but it's also about the collective wisdom that we have with each other around these herbs. Many of these herbs and plants and flowers are things that are spirits that we grew up being in relationship with in our homes or in our ancestral homelands, right? So sometimes when I enter into a space, I ask, what's your relationship to this plant? I want to learn from you too. Like I'm sharing what I know from my perspective and my experience, but also there's often so much wisdom in the room when we come together for a knowledge share or medicine making workshop. So I try to create a lot of space for that in my practice. And then I think a lot about the Dominican Republic and Quisqueya, where I'm from, and how my ancestors practiced medicine. And I'm really learning what my own history was, who in my family, you know, who were the plant people in my family, and asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of research and just remaining a student, like remaining curious about the herbs and trying to stay in that very eager, kind of excited place where I was when I entered into this practice. So Moon Mother is many things. I think it's a world. I don't allow it to be fixated ever, right? I like my edges to be permeable. I like exploring other possibilities around what Moon Mother can be. I love partnership. You'll see that across my offerings and my projects and my programs, there's a lot of collaboration that is so key to me. And yeah, that's very central to my work. I love play and creativity. I love the arts. These are things that are very important to me. And so they're reflected inside of Moon Mother as well. And so, yeah, I would say sometimes it's hard to define very succinctly what Moon Mother is because it's so alive to me.
Yeah.
And there's so much of it that I'm still experimenting with. And as long as that's joyful, I have given myself permission to allow it to grow and to continue to be alive. It's the same as our plant allies, right? It's we watch them grow, we watch them go through their phases and stay beautiful and teach us and stay wise and inspire. And I feel like I want my wish, like my greatest longing for Moon Mother is that it does the same.
Oh, that's so amazing. And it also is, I feel like, very aligned because I feel like a lot of people who I've talked to have said that they've become herbalists when they also became a mother, when they were pregnant as well. Maybe it's this need to like, I'm not only needing to take care of myself, but I'm about to raise this human. Like, what are some alternative ways I can care for myself using plants? So I love that that's also a part of your origin story for starting Moon Mother Apothecary.
Definitely. I think care is a big one, care and family and community. And when you're bringing life into this world, I feel like, or at least for me, I was taking stock of like who was around me, who could support me, what I had access to. And the plants were part of that community for me. You know, they were a way that I could support my family, support our health, our well-being, you know, our joy, our heartbreak. All these things are true. And I very much see them as part of my journey into motherhood. Yes.
I would love to know also, because you were mentioning about your practice of like learning more about your family background as being Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Dominican background. Like, have you found like any ancestors that you knew were also herbalists or specific plants that they use that you now try to integrate into your practice?
Yes, this is my life's work, and I know that it is, and I'm barely, you know, I'm scratching the surface. I feel like I've just arrived at the gate, and I'm just understanding, you know, and it's a beautiful place to be. I think that I'm in the flow and where I'm supposed to be at this given moment in time, but it's timely also because you know, I'm able to go back and forge and deepen relationships with my family and my cousins and people who are still on Quisqueya, still in the Dominican Republic, who I spent many years being disconnected from for many reasons. And I feel myself sort of turning my body, if I can like allegorically define it or describe it, it's like I'm turning my entire body to face my people and my past and my history, and really trying to stay informed about who we were and who we are, and regardless of where we landed, right? Because some of us are on this side of the ocean, and some of us are still in the Dominican Republic. So I try to keep my heart centered on my homeland, my ancestral homeland. And for me, that means learning about the plants that grow on the island, learning about how those plants are used, coming into relationship with those plants as the years go by, right? Because this is a forever practice. It's not that I meet the plant and I read the materia medica on this plant and now I'm an expert about this plant. I really have to go and witness and talk to people who are working with this plant on the island, talk to people in the diaspora who are working with this plant or cousins of this plant, or have found, alternative medicines on this side of the world that they utilize for the same ailments, for example. So I just stay curious, right? And every opportunity that I have to deepen my knowledge about plants that are native to Quisqueya, I do. And whatever I learn, I try to make space to offer that wisdom back to folks who are interested in learning more. So I'm actually heading to the Dominican Republic this week.
Wow.
Yes. So I'm going to be doing plant research and talking to folks about plants and going to different regions that I've never visited before and sort of understanding the native species of those areas and just putting my feet in the ground and feeling the soil and allowing the wisdom that I know is already part of me to just come to the surface and rise and guide me. And so I'm very excited for that. And I get to bring my daughter and she gets to experience what that's like for her, for me. My mother is also there. So that's like 3 generations on the island for the first time. And I just think it's a very special moment, but I try to keep that door, and especially since I've started my herbalism practice, I felt more tethered to the Dominican Republic. I felt more called to go back and talk to folks who are working with plants. So it's become a very important focal point in my work. And my intention is to continue to study the plants that are not just native to, but growing on the island, and really understand how they're used and how people are working with them and working in collaboration with these plants.
Wow, that's going to be so special. Oh,
Yes.
I'm so excited for you to go on that journey. Is it going to be Luna's first time in the Dominican Republic?
Luna is so well traveled. It is out of this world. So it'll be Luna's second time.
Oh, wow.
Traveling to the Dominican Republic, but it'll be her first time with her grandmother there, which I think is really special. And they have, a very sacred bond. And I think that I'm excited to witness what that's like for them to be sharing space there, from my mom to sort of, teach her about her land and kind of guide her through. So yeah, I'm excited for what's going to happen, I think, or what's going to unfold when we get there.
It's going to be so special. I'm really excited to hear about that trip.
Thank you.
I feel like some people who aren't as clued into the herbalism world might think that an herbalist is a thing of the past or not something that exists anymore. However, we know that herbalism is alive and well. So what does it mean to be an herbalist in 2022? Or more specifically, what does it mean to be a Black, Latinx, queer herbalist who's also a mommy in 2022?
Mm-hmm. I love this question. This is a beautiful question. And I think it's great for me to reflect on what this work means for me, especially as a Libra rising, because justice is so central to what we are seeing in the world right now. And solidarity is so critical in this moment particularly for oppressed people all around the world. And I think that I see herbalism as a tool. I see herbalism as a practice. I see herbalism as an ancestral gift. And I think that we need all our gifts right in the front of, we need our gifts to be front and center, because we're experiencing and we're part of and we're igniting several types of revolutions right now in this very moment. And to me, this is why the phases of Moon Mother are so critical in my work. It's funny because I keep using this word phase, and we know we're always talking about the moon on this side, but it's really important to understand the needs of the moment and to be able to respond to them through my work. And that was really important to me, particularly in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd and the height of the Black Lives Matter uprisings. And I really had to ask myself, like, well, how do I want to show up in this moment as an herbalist? What are the gifts that I can bring to the table? What are the practices that I can center in this moment that would support, my people in this time and what we're trying to do? And it's just so powerful to be able to understand the herbs so much, and to understand, to be so connected to the plant world, to know that there is a purpose there, that there is there was an opportunity and a place for plant medicine in all of those rallies, at all of those vigils, in all of those kind of care packages that both of us were part of, fortunately, and that we could see that we had a vision, that we had a plan, that we understood the ways that plants could impact people at this time, spaces, collectives, movement work, that we showed up in our movements with the power and the magic and the healing of plants. That felt very powerful to me. So I think sometimes we get lost in the terminology sauce, and it's like, am I a herbalist? Am I a special, am I a healer? Am I all these kind of titles that I think change every so often. They're always evolving, and that's a beautiful thing too. It reminds us that language is living. But at the same time, I think that a lot of us are plant people. A lot of us are herbalists without perhaps naming it or wanting to call ourselves that. But many of us are working with plants in beautiful, deep, intentional ways, farm workers, or, my own mother who understands, certain herbs and plants better than me or first, right? And introduces me to them. So I think for me, what it means to be an herbalist right now is to show up in the spaces and in the work that you are part of in a way that is intentional and in alignment and purposeful, I think, right? I've revisited my relationship to what it means to sell what is the relationship that I have with the transaction of the shop, and how can I, which is still a big part of my practice, but also how can I shift that so that I understand what medicines I'm making, who needs them, how I can balance that with, collective care and community care, and what are the ways in which I can participate in the things that I feel are really important to me right now and to my people right now, mostly, right? I'm a reflection of my community, so I see them as the same, but I'm so privileged to be in community with herbalists who are thinking about that in their practices, who are thinking about, how do I show up for, as a queer healer? How do I show up for the, BIPOC community? How do I show up for mothers? There are herbalists who are so intentional about the ways that their medicine lands, and what they're doing and what their, central focus is. And I really respect that. And I just feel grateful that I'm in the space where I also get to learn from you and from all of our collaborators and community members in this work.
So beautiful. Yes. And honestly, that's like why I wanted to do this series, like Plants is Liberation, because I really believe that plants can liberate us from deep systems of oppression. And I think I was going to ask that as my next question, but you just already perfectly answered it. And just, it's really about community care, collective care, and speaking to the needs of what people who look like us need, our community needs, maybe people who don't look like us, but need support in a moment, is really an act of freedom. So you've said it already so well. I also just want to know a little, you don't have to go too much in because I know you have so many other wonderful things that you do, but you also live a full-time life working at the Met. So if you could just share a little bit about the work that you do there. And I'm just curious how your herbalism practice and your museum practice, your love of art as well too, intersect in your life as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Maybe I'll start with the second one because it's been a journey to sort of understand the very clear ways that my work overlaps over the years. And so I think at first I really tried to separate what I was doing in the art world and what I was doing in the museum world from my herbalism practice. And the truth is, it is so aligned. There are so many shared values in both spaces that I bring to the work and that I'm committed to in both spaces. And so I think that first and foremost, collaboration is really key. Community is key. At the Met, I'm responsible for community partnerships and community engagement and thinking about social practice and supporting artists and really thinking about the museum as a resource for artists who are already deeply engaged in their own communities across New York City. And so that is absolutely aligned with my work as an herbalist, as a community herbalist, someone who is really interested in understanding what are the superpowers that everybody at this table has and really allowing those to rise and then figuring out what the magic is going to be. And I feel like I do that as an herbalist, and I'm doing that work at the Met, and it's I'm always very inspired by what emerges, and it is never about one person. I feel like in both those spaces, there's never there are leaders, but I feel like we're all leaders, and it's always about the collective good and what we need, what are our needs, and how can we leverage the relationships, the networks, the resources that we have in order to have a deeper impact in the neighborhoods or in the spaces that where we have agency or where we're a part of, that we're a part of. So it's very similar work. And I often see, I think I'm able to sort of step back and understand what I value and why I enter into this work in particular. Like, why am I so connected to this work? Because it's about people, because it's about communities, because it's about, understanding the magic sauce and then making sure that something beautiful happens and that something sustainable happens. It's about allowing change and allowing flow and allowing growth and evolution to happen and not being confined, like you said, by the systems that be, whatever they may be, challenging that, pushing up against that, creating space for more possibilities, creativity, joy, right? Centering the voice of young folk, of people who are often sort of pushed out of the conversation. All of that is part of my work in the museum space. And so I think with more reflection over the years and sort of trying to pace myself, I don't know if I'm quite there yet. I'm still doing the most, but the more I reflect on the how, like what is the way that I do the work, the more I understand what is valuable to me. And yeah, and I think that I'm coming to grips with that more now, more than ever these days.
I'm glad to hear that, because I know I can definitely feel tethered between two loves of like, oh, you want to
Yes.
give each space that you are inspired by, because we're all so multifaceted. Everyone has multiple interests, but sometimes you feel like you have to choose.
Yes.
So I'm glad that they are intertwining more in
They're
your life.
intertwining more. Yes,
That's
they're
great.
intertwining more. And I think we're refining, shedding what is not, shedding the things that are not completely joyous, completely aligned, and completely intentional. And I think that takes time, and it takes grace and a certain level of tenderness with the self to be able to say, that's okay. We can let that go, because that energy that you were exerting on that project that you didn't really feel very connected to, that didn't move you, that didn't feel aligned with you, you can now take that energy and put it towards something that you really care about, or, you know, love yourself more, sleep more, you know, all the things, read more. Those are things I really actually want to do, but I want to do more of. But yeah, it is a delicate balance, and I'm also happy that they're intertwining more. I think that's really important for me these days.
That's great. Is there a plant, specifically an herb, that if you could be an herb, what would you be and why?
Ooh, I love this question. Oh, I feel like I'm really having a love affair with lemon balm for a long time. And I definitely associate lemon balm with the moon. So there's something personal there. Mugwort for sure, and always and forever mugwort. So I'm combining energies now.
Yes.
You told me one, but I'm like off the chain now. And then I posted about this recently, but the way that witch hazel looks in the spring is just so gorgeous. And I'm obsessed with that color. And I'm very curious about the medicine of this plant. I've actually never worked with witch hazel, the plant. So it calls me, it's calling me. Something about it is inviting me to work with it. So, and maybe this is just like chartreuse is one of my favorite colors. And so to see it in nature, I'm like, wow, like that's a natural color that's so beautiful and unexpected. And yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of when you're walking through the park these days and you're watching the buds come from the ground, there is this thing that is happening where you are remembering that there's something on the other side of grief, there's something on the other side of pain, there's something on the other side of this cold winter that we've had in so many ways. And I love that because it's so hopeful.
Yeah, no, I love that. And also that is true, so true about witch hazel in particular. I feel like I've also been really drawn to it this season, and also just loving that it's native to New York too. I think is really cool because there's so many plants that we love, but not all of them are native. So I love that witch hazel is one of them. And yeah, every time I think of lemon balm, I think of you. So I love that you chose, as well as mugwort.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That's so beautiful. Yes. I took some before I actually got on this call with you, so I can be with it while I spoke with you. So she's here somewhere.
I'd love if you have any projects that you want to share with folks, like let us know kind of what do you got going on. If you want to share anything, if you don't, that's okay too.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for the invitation to do so. Someone recently asked me when episode 2 of Plant Talk was coming out, and I have no idea, but I'm really excited about someone wanting another episode. Plant Talk is a pop-up talk show about plants where I'm the host and I bring special guests in and musicians and puppets and collaborators to talk about plants and again to demystify this idea that plants and plant culture and herbalism is not alive and well in New York City, and to share some plant wisdom with folks wherever they may be. So I'm hoping that this summer, Plant Talk episode 2 will come out, but you can watch episode 1 on my website under projects. And I'm always curious to hear what people think and what they want to see more of. So I'd love to hear from you all.
Amazing. And where can folks find you on the internet?
Yes, I'm on Instagram at Moon Mother Apothecary. I'm also on TikTok, although not that active, but definitely trying to get back in the game, is also at Moon Mother Apothecary. And then my website is moonmotherapothecary.com. So all my contact info is thankfully pretty much the same across the channels, and you can find me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Suhaly, for your time today.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate you hearing your story.
Thank you, Arvi. So grateful to be here.